All right, I have 7 past the hour, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Like I said, one of our panelists is not here yet, but hopefully he can join us in a short period of time. Until then, I would like to introduce the remainder of the panel, and I'm going to start with Elizabeth Mayberry. Elizabeth started out as a pre-law member at the University of Maryland. While there, she served as a professional Greek council chair, then vice president, and then president. She then proceeded to law school at the University of Richmond School of Law, where she transferred her membership over to the Henry chapter of Phi Alpha Delta. There, she served as justice for 2 years. Now, she is an alumni member in District 30. She took the October 2020 California bar exam and is currently waiting on her results. She was recently hired at a family law firm in San Diego, California. And when she's not working on her law career, she's spending time with her law dog, Belle the Corgi, and her husband, Josh the pilot. So obviously, Elizabeth has some fantastic experience that we will delve into here, and hopefully she can share it with you. Our other panelist is Sydney Smith. Sydney is a third-year law student at the University of Miami School of Law. She is the current Vice Justice of the RASCO chapter, and she previously held the position of clerk there. She was also a member of the pre-law chapter at Florida State University, where she was the marketing chair. At our most recent convention, Sydney was awarded second place for the Frank E. Gray Outstanding Clerk Award. She is grateful for all the opportunities Phi Alpha Delta has given her and looks forward to connecting with any pre-law members who are looking for some advice. And finally, I'll introduce myself. My name is Ronald Coleman. I am the District 15 Justice for Phi Alpha Delta. That's all of Tennessee, all of Kentucky, and the southern half of Ohio. I previously served as Justice and Marshal of the Sanford chapter. And professionally, I'm an Assistant Attorney General with the Office of the Tennessee Attorney General in the Criminal Appeals Division. So we are glad to have you all here, and hopefully this can be informative to you, and you can take this and go back to your chapters and become better leaders and work on your chapter operations. There are 4 main topics that we're going to discuss. The first one is going to be going over chapter leadership. Then we're going to talk about planning events and planning programs. Then we're going to talk about how to recruit members and then how to also keep them engaged once they become a member. And finally, we will talk about longevity, or making sure that your chapter stays successful in years to come. So we really have a few things that I'm going to have the panelists talk about. And moving first to chapter leadership, one of the things that I would like both Elizabeth and Sydney to talk on is what is something that you wish someone told you before becoming an officer? And I'm going to give that to Elizabeth first.
I guess the biggest thing is don't take everything on yourself. I've been in 2 chapters now where it's a lot of rebuilding when I was taking over leadership. And so there's a lot of pressure to take things on yourself, but people want to help. Delegate it out to people so that they're involved. When they're involved, they're going to want to stick around. But it also just takes a lot of stress off of you.
Thanks, Elizabeth. And can you hear me? I apologize in advance. I have a terrible computer, and sometimes I will talk and it won't pick it up. So I'm just apologizing in advance. Sydney, what is something that you wish someone had told you before you became an officer?
I would say I wish someone told me to make a plan. I feel like we're all super excited to become chapter officers, and we can become overwhelmed in that process. And then we're left saying like, okay, now what? Like, what's the next step that I can do? So I found making a plan gives you attainable goals to work towards. So for example, it was at my second semester as clerk, I realized that making a plan would be a lot more helpful. So we met as an e-board and decided what events we wanted to be placed on the calendar, and, made sure that we had placeholders for the next semester so that we had something to work towards. And so to me, it was very helpful to have something that I know I want to achieve, and that I have a plan towards achieving that goal as well.
Thanks, Sydney. Thanks. Can you hear me? Okay. Sorry, guys. Hopefully this won't happen the entire time. But no, I think they both have some really great feedback there. And I think something that ties it together, and what I would recommend, or what I wish someone had told me, is that teamwork makes the dream work. And I know that's cliche, but you can't take it all on yourself, and you can't just delegate to everyone. You need to work as a team, coordinate with each other, and have everyone have specific duties. I think that's an important thing to keep an eye on.
If
Kind
I
of
may
going
add to that, Ron, I put in, and Katie will give you guys access to this. Something we did in our chapter is we actually had a form that we'd give to every single officer, every single chair, and it would have your list of your duties and events. So that helps with delegation is that you create it for everyone, so everyone's on the same page. Everyone knows who's their contact chain. So you have like, okay, this person on the e-board will contact this person. So if they need assistance with this task. And so it kind of gives a place that everyone has the information they need and so that they can work together.
Yes, I think that's fantastic. Everything needs to be out and in the open. And if you can communicate that not only to the officers, but the prospective officers, and in fact, all the members, then, the justice or the president is not going to be getting called by every single person. They'll know who to contact. And that will also help take a load off of each individual officer. Kind of moving on to the next question that I'd like, again, both Elizabeth and Sydney to talk about is, what is a key feature of a good leader that you've seen, of a leader that you've worked with? What are some key features that have really kind of stood out or made someone stand out as a good leader? Sydney, do you want to take this one first?
Sure. I would say having open communication, like Elizabeth just touched upon. It's hard to run a successful chapter if your chapter officers have no idea what's going on or who's going to do what. So I think keeping that open communication between everyone is very important. And also having dedicated officers. I know, at least with my experience in law school, a lot of things come up and it's hard to attend certain events, but reminding yourself that you're a chapter officer and you're a leader to the rest of your members, you should keep each other accountable by being dedicated to going to all events or fundraisers or whatever it may be.
Excellent. Yeah, I think that's a great point. What about you, Elizabeth?
I guess something, those included, but something to add on is some of the best leaders were the ones that knew their strengths and knew what their weaknesses were. Like, I know I can be very organized, but I'm not the best at communicating. Like, sending emails and social media are hard for me. And so it's knowing what my weaknesses are to find people to help me with those, and actually not just keeping it on myself, because if I tried to do it all myself, it would not have gone well. So I had my secretaries or my clerks that made it just run so much better because they were really good at social media and we balanced each other out.
I think that's another great point, is know your strengths and weaknesses, and goes back to teamwork makes the dream work. Find someone, surround yourself with people who have strengths where you're weak, and bolster their weaknesses with your strengths. And when you work together, it all flows very smoothly. One thing I did want to point out is we are happy to answer any questions that any of you may have. Feel free to put them in the chat. And so I just didn't want you to think that you couldn't ask any questions. But we're, at this point, going to move on and talk about chapter events and programs. This is my favorite question, and I always ask all the panelists to say, what is the favorite program that you've been a part of? Just kind of tell me the story of how it came to be, what it was, and why you liked it so much. Elizabeth, could you talk about that?
So one of my favorite events, and this is done at the pre-law level, was our Geek Week. So many people hear Greek Week, we call it Geek Week. And this is where P.A.D partnered with several other professional organizations on campus, and we just competed with each other. So we did everything from social media to charity work to like athletic competitions to trivia as a way to kind of do something fun and outgoing. But what's great with P.A.D is that we really had a lot of bonding over it. So you had the social interaction of working as a team, learning how to, for example, how to toss an egg to the other person gently and talk and communicate with each other. But also like charity event, like getting people involved, because for our stream cleanup was one for the 1 year I was there, and they got points by getting people out and getting people involved. But on top of that, we got to work with some other great professional organizations on campus, which if you go in the legal profession, you're going to be working with engineers, you're going to be working with doctors. So you're really kind of getting to know those people early on, which will kind of help you further along in your career.
Wow, that sounds like a fantastic event. I'm going to ask you to expound on it just a little bit. Could you kind of go into how did you get in contact with these other professional organizations? And did you have to coordinate with the school? Did you like, how was this set up?
So PGC is the organization that we created while I was there. I was the one that helped draft the bylaws. We are not an entity through the school. And so it kind of just happened that there was a couple of us, like I lived with one of the members that was in one of the engineering fraternities. And so we kind of just knew each other because we all kind of ran in similar circles because we're professional organizations. And we're like, hey, let's just do this event. And so we, because of just the organization structure, like let's just found this. It was us, APO, Theta Tau, we're just a few of them. And we just wanted to have a structure to be able to work together. So we created the organization ourselves on campus. And it kind of just fell together because we were doing Geek Week for years prior. So it kind of didn't come out of nowhere. So the year that we founded the organization was 5 years after they started doing Geek Week. So we kind of just made it more of an organized function. And then from it, they started to be able to do socials with the other groups, to be able to go out and do like potlucks, to doing cleanups together. So it kind of became a larger organization just for them to interact with each other.
Awesome. Thanks, Elizabeth. I think that's, a great event. I really like the idea. And I think that, if you're a pre-law student now and you don't have something set up already, you can reach out to those other organizations. Or what you can really do is go to your pre-law advisor or go to some professors and faculty and ask them to reach out. And it sounds a lot better. Like it gives you a little bit more oomph, and then you can coordinate with those other organizations. I think that's a really great event. Thanks, Elizabeth. Sydney, could you tell us what your favorite event was?
So I'd have to say my favorite event has been the How to Make Networking for You panel that we originally started a year ago at Miami Law. It was a way for us to connect with the P.A.D alumni and our members there in the chapter. So essentially it's a 2-part event where we choose one specific week, and let's say on Monday we'll have a How to Make Networking for You panel where we'll bring in 3 attorneys who will come and give like tips and tricks on how to network and what's been successful for them and maybe what's not been so successful. This year we kind of geared it towards virtual networking since we are all on Zoom. And then on either like a Wednesday or a Thursday of that same week, we'll do a networking alumni social where we bring in P.A.D alumni and our current P.A.D members so that they can use the knowledge that they've gained from the panel within the social. And it's been very successful, at least from last year, because a lot of our members, including myself, were offered jobs from attorneys in our local area. So it's been really enjoyable. And 2 other ones just that are like pre-law chapter programs that I've noticed is I know the FSU pre-law chapter before COVID used to do like a Disney trip, which was really nice for all the members to go together. And I believe it's the University of Illinois that's done that game that's called Among Us, where there's like an imposter and it's an online version, that they're doing like a game night like that, which I think seems really fun since it's like the new popular game now.
Yeah, that does seem very interesting. I like your networking program, and I'm going to ask you to expound a little bit as well, predominantly because some pre-law students might not know how to reach out. How do you find out who these P.A.D alumni are, and how do you go about getting their contact information? Could you talk about that?
Yeah, so we reached out to the executive office who has current information for all P.A.D alumni, and we asked them to narrow it down to the Rasco chapter or anybody around Miami specifically. And from there, within our e-board, we split up the list because it was a lot of alumni. And we would personally email them asking if they'd be interested in joining our inaugural alumni social and kind of explain what our idea was. And luckily, a lot of them were very interested, especially in connecting with their fellow P.A.D members from years prior. So that's how we went about it.
Yeah, I think that's great. I wanted to just like really emphasize how fantastic the executive office is and how great they can be, what fantastic resources they are. And so, yeah, always reach out to the executive office because they are fantastic. I'm going to take a second and talk about my favorite event because I'm selfish like that. Mine is what's called Immunity Week. And so we did it for law school, but it can very easy. And I know other pre-law chapters that have adapted it to pre-law. And basically it's when when you're getting close to finals, or closer to the end of the semester, you really don't want to go and read and do the reading or get called on or any of that stuff. And so this is a whole week where you coordinate with the professors to either donate food cans or donate money to a charity, do something charitable. And in exchange, you get a ticket or you get a little something where if the professor calls on you, you can hold that up, and you didn't have to do the reading. You don't have to get called on. It's just like a freebie. And so you can kind of ignore having to be prepared for class and focus on getting ready for finals and for, closing down the semester. I think it's a really great event. My chapter did it. We had cans. And so there was just a box outside of each classroom, and you just put the cans in. We collected, I want to say it was over 2,000 cans. I know it didn't fit in 4 pickup trucks. So it's definitely a good thing to do. I know other chapters, like I said, especially virtually now, is just send proof that you've donated $5 to some charity, and they'll email you a little ticket, and you can use that even if you're going virtual. Even if your professor calls on you, you can just kind of hold them up and then rip it so that you don't get to use it more than once. I think that was my favorite event, and I think it's very adaptable. You can kind of tweak it however you want. The crux is that the professors don't call on you, and so you can kind of be lazy. Elizabeth, did you want to point something else out?
I'm good for now. Joshua sent in a message in the chat if you didn't see it.
I did, yes. I saw that question, and that is, we're actually going to be moving on to that later on. So we will definitely address that. And I know someone else has sent me a question. We will be addressing that. So, but one of the next things that we're having to deal with, of course, we're in a pandemic, and it's just a hectic time, especially since people are getting Zoom fatigue, and how do we have programs? So Sydney, especially, I know that you're currently planning events. Can you talk about how you adapted to a virtual learning environment when it comes to having chapter events or having chapter programs?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, the Zoom fatigue has been a real issue. But we try to host events kind of like doing a Kahoot game night, or like the University of Illinois chapter is doing the Among Us game. We try to host events where it doesn't feel like you're so much on a Zoom call all the time. That's how we've been dealing with it. In terms of all of our other events, we kind of do just rely on Zoom because it's hard to hold those in-person events when the school doesn't allow so, and there is a pandemic that's going on.
Yeah, and I'm going to talk about that as well, but our third panelist has been able to join us, and so I'd like to introduce him real quick. Our third panelist is Anthony Tony Bastone. After obtaining his master's degree in criminology and corrections, Tony spent several years working in various roles within the criminal justice system, while also serving as an adjunct professor at the University of Tulsa. He then moved on to a career in law school administration and student services. He served as the assistant dean or the director of career services for over 40 years, working for different colleges such as the University of Tulsa School of Law, Golden Gate University School of Law, the University of Washington School of Law, SMU School of Law, University of Colorado Boulder School of Law, Roger Williams University School of Law, and he's now back at UC Boulder. He's currently the advisor for the pre-law chapter there. And in 2018, he was recognized as the Dr. Charles J. Fleener Outstanding Pre-Law Chapter Advisor by our fraternity. So we are very happy to have Tony here with us. And he can definitely provide a different perspective as a pre-law advisor. And so, Tony, I'm going to come back to you and ask. I have a question specifically for you, but very briefly, I wanted to talk about to finish up or follow up on that question of how to adapt to a virtual learning environment and how to organize your events that way. And what I found, again, like Sydney said, Zoom is really kind of the only thing you can do to have immediate programs. If it's like everyone show up and watch the movie or things of that nature. But what I've noticed chapters have started to do is to have a somewhat of a prolonged event. Instead of having like a movie night or a members dinner, instead it's like I said, like an immunity week. And you kind of have this week-long thing, or it's a coat drive, or it's a book club or something of that nature, to where people don't have to hop onto Zoom and they can still participate in the program at their convenience. And so I just wanted to suggest that. But Tony, since you're here, we're talking about this virtual learning environment. And as a pre-law advisor and as a member of the faculty, do you have any suggestions for how a chapter can modify their programs to still engage members and still have programs in this virtual world?
Thanks. I'm glad to be here as well with this distinguished panel. I didn't want you guys to think that I couldn't hold a job. Actually, since I was with 6 law schools, I actually developed a little expertise in legal career development, and that's why I kept moving and moving and moving. And then what happened is I tried to retire after 34 years in legal education and came back to Boulder with my wife and my 4 Labrador retrievers. And now I still have 1 wife, but just 1 lab. And who knows, he may jump up here and say hello to you in a minute. But I came back here and I tried to retire for a year, and I was a complete failure at retirement. And the reason, very simple, I just missed my students. And so CU contacted me and they said, hey, you've got the credentials we're looking for. Are you interested in becoming our academic advisor for pre-law? At that time, it was a half-time position. And I said, absolutely. So I took that position. At the same time, Phi Alpha Delta contacted me and asked if I'd serve as their faculty advisor. That was the best thing that ever happened to me, because we're joined at the hips. I do very little in terms of the pre-law advancement without Phi Alpha Delta. I think I sent Ron and Elizabeth a schedule of a program I started 7 years ago. It's called Tuesday Talks. The whole idea of the program was to bring in attorneys from all over the country, which I did. And then we started growing exponentially, Phi Alpha Delta, and I started having law school admission deans and directors contact me and said, hey, can we come to Tuesday Talks? I said, sure, why not? So that's what we have now. And I'm more than happy to share the schedule with the pre-law advisors and also invite you to participate. For instance, this, and then I'm going to answer your question a little bit more, Mr. Coleman. And so, for instance, this coming Tuesday, we have Sarah Weddington, the winning attorney for Roe v. Wade. I've been fortunate enough to know her for 3 decades, and she's going to give a presentation. It'll probably be to 100 to 200 attendees. I know we had the Harvard Law School a couple of weeks ago. We had 94. So in terms of building the relationship, I think getting back to Mr. Coleman's question, you have to I've worked very carefully with the board of directors at Phi Alpha Delta, and we just do things together most of the time. And that's why I think we've grown so well in the position. And then I was fortunate this August to finally go full time. And so one of the things I'm seeing, and I want to ask the panelists here if you're seeing it too. I mean, there's just an explosion in terms of law school admissions. We had the Georgetown assistant dean the other evening for Tuesday Talks, and I think he said they're up maybe 40 to 50%, maybe even more in terms of applications. Just in September, I had October, I had 162 appointments. Since the academic year began in July, I've had 496 appointments. Now, I typically have maybe 800 appointments a year. I think I'm going to far exceed that this year. I've already busted 496, and that's about 124 per month. I'm seeing so many students that I'm actually seeing them on the weekends through the Buff portal and through Zoom. With regards to Zoom, I mean, there's a lot of people that have Zoom fatigue. I don't. I've been remote for about 7 months, and I'm finding that my students don't have Zoom fatigue either. So, you know, we're doing just fine. And then today, we were just notified because of the rise of coronavirus that we're going remote again. I mean, we've had kind of a hybrid situation at the University of Colorado, But now we're going to remote again. We're not even going to have spring break, because we don't want kids to be infected. And so we're taking this, very seriously. So in terms of building the program, the pre-law program in Phi Alpha Delta, it's a matter of just, working with them. And that's what I've done. And it's been it's been a tremendous relationship. I'm fortunate to have them, and hopefully they're fortunate to have me. They've kept me on for 7 years, and I don't plan to leave anytime soon. So I hope, Mr. Coleman, that answered a little bit of your question.
Thank you, Tony. And I've said it once, and I'll say it again and again and again. The executive office is a godsend. The amount of work that they can do and the amount of assistance they can provide is fantastic. And for some reason, they don't get annoyed when you bug them with email after email after email, or at least that's how I found it, because I know I've bugged them way too much.
Yeah.
But we're about halfway through, so I want to switch to the third topic because we're talking about 4. And so the next topic we're going to talk about is recruitment and then engagement and how to keep them engaged. And so, Elizabeth, you've gone through all 3 stages. You were a pre-law member, you were a law student, and now you're an alumni. Could you talk about kind of with recruitment, just tell us like what works? What is the most effective thing at getting people to join?
So I guess it's like most attorneys will say it depends. You need to find your niche because every single school is going to be different. Whereas at the University of Maryland, we were the only pre-law group on campus. So we kind of had a monopoly on pre-law members where we had weekly meetings. And I mean weekly Tuesday. I laughed because he has the Tuesday talks, but that's when we also had our meetings where we'd have speakers come in. We would do game nights. We would do kind of once a week, we'd have an activity. And it was easy to do because we're the only one out there. And so everyone would come to us. When I got to law school, it's a little different because every single group is a law group. And so when you're doing that, you have to kind of find what is the niche on your campus. My law school had a ton of fantastic student groups that would put on the event. So my the Henry chapter found that we were good at social and networking. That was the niche that made us different because it took it beyond the law school. So we did a lot of social events. Our big event we did monthly was we did a monthly coffee event, which we were able to actually transition to after like COVID hit. You could do it on Zoom where somebody could have a cup of coffee and you can just talk to somebody for an hour during our time to kind of bring classes to unwind and just relax. But you have to find the niche of your school. There's other schools that Phi Alpha Delta at the law school is the only group that does a lot of these big events. So it's finding what works for your school because there's not a one hat fits all for everybody. But it's identifying what makes Phi Alpha Delta unique at that school. And that's where you're going to thrive is when you fill that gap of what is needed.
I think that's a fantastic answer. And to go along with that, I briefly wanted to mention, talk to the students and see what are they interested in. Phi Alpha Delta, its general mission statement is service to the students, the school, the profession, and the community. That's a really big umbrella, and you can kind of have a niche wherever. So if the students are interested in a specific type of thing, if they want to do a lot of socials, or if they want to have, speakers come in who are attorneys, who are, law school admission deans, things of that nature, you can tweak your chapter to get more members in. And one more thing that I'm going to add, it's really hard for people to say no. We're kind of ingrained in society. Just when someone asks you to do something, you don't want to say no unless you have to. And so I think, every single one of you became a member of Phi Alpha Delta because someone came up and said, hey, will you join this fraternity? I want you to be a member. Can you do it? And you didn't say no. And so it's worth a shot, one-on-one, going up and asking someone. And again, the worst they can do is say no, which is already going to be a little bit hard for them to do. We had Joshua Wilkinson asked a question about, he's a relatively new chapter. They just rechartered. And, how do you build relationships? How do you recruit new members in this pandemic? And so, Sydney, you're going through recruitment right now with Rasco chapter. And I know Rasco chapter isn't brand new, but could you talk about some of the life hacks that you've learned on how to recruit members and how to establish a relationship with new law students in this type of, age of COVID?
Yeah, so I would suggest challenging your current members, maybe to do like a recruitment challenge. That's something we tried to do with Rasco chapter last year. Although it wasn't in COVID, I think it could still apply right now. Depending on how many members your current members can get to join P.A.D, you can offer a gift card or something so that there's an incentive for them to join. Like if you have 10 members currently and they each bring one friend, you know, that's 10 more members that you already have. Also, like Ron and Elizabeth were saying, they all have great points. I just want to reiterate, focusing on what the students at your school want. So asking them like, are you interested in LSAT tips or more community service-based programs, or do you want to socials so that you can talk with practicing attorneys maybe in your area? If you focus on what the students want, they will likely show up to those type of events. So I think that would be really successful for your chapter if you try to implement it.
Elizabeth, yeah. Go ahead.
I want to add something on to Sydney's. And right now you have something special is that everyone is on Zoom. So you're able to actually reach out to people beyond your area. So like even for one of my classes in law school, we were able to bring some of the DC attorneys that may typically not travel down to Richmond to come and speak. So you may be able to get California attorneys to come talk. You may get somebody that's at a firm that's not in your area, or even like we've had somebody from the law library speak and they're fantastic to hear. But you're able to get more people than just the people in your area to come talk if that's something students are wanting to hear.
Yeah, I think all of that is fantastic advice. And one more thing that I'll plug, if you're trying to build a relationship and trying to virtually recruit, especially given that we've already talked about how difficult it is to have programs and Zoom fatigue, you can emphasize our national partnerships. You've seen here at this conference how we've partnered up, you know, with LSAT test prep people. We've got, you know, relationships with law schools. We've got all of these different deals and membership benefits on a national level. And so even if we're not having, you know, events like in person, or if people don't really necessarily want to go to Zoom events, you can still emphasize join Phi Alpha Delta because you get all these benefits. You know, even if you don't want to go to any of that, if you don't want to be participating, I think that's a good recruitment tool when we're kind of in this, you know, situation. All right, so we've talked about recruiting, and now we need to talk about how do you keep them engaged? How do you get them to keep coming back? And so actually, Tony, you talked about your Tuesday talks and how it seems to have really bolstered your membership. Could you talk about how either just that Tuesday Talks program or other programs that your chapter is doing to get the members to continue to stay involved rather than joining and just never showing up?
Well, we just have not had that problem. And I think I'm going to give the credit, I don't think I'm going to the wonderful board of directors we've had. And we have a person right now, she's in charge of fundraising, and she's contacted Krispy Kreme. And I mean, we've had so many donations for that. So I think if you have a very involved board of directors with Phi Alpha Delta, you're in pretty good shape. And another selling point, maybe you guys know this, is that 5 members of the Supreme Court were members of Phi Alpha Delta. My hero, Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Kagan, Sotomayor, Breyer, and Alito. And that's a pretty good reference for your students who are considering going to law school. If you tell them that 5 members of the Supreme Court, I don't know if Amy Coney Barrett was a member of Phi Alpha Delta or not. Ron, you may, and if you do, please jump in. But having an extraordinarily active board member, and I would say as the faculty advisor, you should maintain an extraordinarily close relationship with your president. We have a president right now, Berkeley Newhouse Veely, and she was voted, I think, last year along with our secretary as the outstanding president, you know, in Phi Alpha Delta of all the chapters. And that gave her a lot of notoriety, gave the secretary a lot of notoriety. So that gives people coming aboard, you know, a goal, you know, hey, I want to be like Berkeley Newhouse Veely. I want to be like Amanda Rios Santiago. And then I think mentoring is important as well. I just visited with a student yesterday, and he said, "Oh, Dean Bastone, I was referred to you by Jack Burke." Well, Bert graduated 3 years ago. He went 2 years for Teach for America. He hadn't even gone to law school. He got a master's degree, and he's referring one of his mentees to me who does want to go to law school. So I think the faculty advisor, the pre-law advisor, with your chapter, you need to develop very, very close relationships. We just don't have a problem in terms of keeping them coming. I mean, when I first took over as the faculty advisor, I think we had maybe 10 or 15 members. And I think I was visiting with Berkeley Newhouse Veely. I said, give me an update on our membership. Ron probably knows more about this than I do. And she said, oh, I think we're larger now than we've ever been. So we're adding people all the time. When I visit with a pre-law student, one of the things I talk to them about is Tuesday talks, joining Phi Alpha Delta, and then sending them what I call this document dump, which is, stuff that you guys get from LSAT on how to apply to law school, the writing an effective cover letter. Hell, that was written by Dean Kornblatt from Georgetown Law School, and I've been using that for 7.5 years now. I was going to write an article, and I thought, how can I improve on that? So I gave him a big shout out the other night. So I hope that gives you some idea. The other thing that I'm willing to do with any of you guys, if you want, one, you can participate in Tuesday talks. Any of your students, you can, to get a sense of how we do it. When we do a Tuesday talk program, I always introduce the president. If we have information from some of the board members, we let them give a report, and then I introduce the speaker. So we're all continuously engaged with each other. Okay, so.
Thanks, Tony. And I think you made a point, and I'm going to combine a point that you made with one that Elizabeth made a little while ago. You were talking about how you've got passionate officers. The board of officers or the executive board is very passionate and that they're willing to do stuff. And Elizabeth was talking about how you find the niche and find something that the students are interested in. And so I think you can expand it beyond the officers. You want to get the members engaged. Like, it's great if you have 5 officers, but we want everyone to show up and everyone to do things. Yeah. Well, again, we've established that there's a giant umbrella of events that can fall under Phi Alpha Delta themed events. And so if a member is interested in doing something, provide that backing. We've got the executive office. We've got all these people who are willing to help you out. And so if that's something, you take it and run with it. Let the member go and do, organize a program if it's something they're interested in, or do something like that. And if members will show up to things that they're interested in, and especially things that they've planned. So allow them to do that, give them the reins, and then just kind of as an exec board, oversee that. I think that's a good point. And then Sydney, could you talk a little bit about how you keep your members at RASCO chapter involved?
Yeah, so I guess this will answer this question, and I wanted to add to something you just said. We create committee positions. So we'll have fundraising, socials, whatever committee, and then we ask our members, how would you like to get involved? What events would you like to plan? So it keeps it as a way so they keep coming back and they want to be involved, and then they can see their events happening. I'm trying to think what else we do. We send out emails, every couple of weeks to our members as well. I'm not sure if we'll talk about this later on, so stop me if I'm going off track. We also try to use social media. It depends on your school. Again, what do organizations mostly use? At Miami Law, it's social media. We have Facebook groups for our different class pages. So in the class of 2021, we'll post things that are geared toward 3Ls and the 2Ls and 1Ls and their respective pages. And other than that, it's word of mouth too. We try and invite our friends to these events so that there's more of a network that's attending our events.
Yeah, I think all of that is fantastic advice. The last thing that I want to talk about before we get to any questions that people have is longevity and how to make sure that your chapter goes on even when you're gone, or the next year or the year after that. And so the first thing that I want to ask, and this is for Elizabeth and Sydney specifically, how what was a successful part of your officer transitions, or what makes an officer transition meeting the most effective? And so, Elizabeth, could you talk to that first?
So the big thing is not just like telling them what to do, is actually helping them actually do it. So one of the big things that we did both at the pre-law level and the law school level was during transition, actually planning the next year with them. Especially like the most recent was that in law school for me, which was affected a little bit with COVID, was actually planning out. So we had our alumni social, which is our last event that we do for the year. And we would have the new team plan it, but we would assist them. So they're learning, how do I get funding, help pay for it? So who do I need to talk to? How do I advertise? What is the policies of the school? And so you're walking through planning an event with them early on, and you're still around for them to ask questions too. And so this helps them learn the actual processes of the school, like hierarchy in a sense, because that's going to apply at both schools, like such as at the University of Maryland, we were not school funded. So how did we get access to our bank accounts that we had from our member dues? How do we book a room on campus? Because you don't have all those connections. Luckily, we had a fantastic pre-law advisor who was Greg Schaefer, who's still there at Maryland, but not every school has that connection. And so it's trying to figure out who are your connections to help you almost have this history that will continue on. So how do you train the next generation? Having a great pre-law advisor helps make that transition smooth, because they sometimes can help kind of tell you how things were done. But it's also sometimes for some schools like the University of Richmond, we had a pre-law organization on the campus with the law school. And so the pre-law group actually reached out to the law school. We were able to help with some of the transition there. So it's finding on how do you carry on that tradition, and how do you kind of share that oral history back down.
If I can add to that, Elizabeth, a succession strategy is something that a lot of other organizations have that I'm involved in, whether or not that's Boy Scouts of America, the Healthcare Collaborative. We always have a succession strategy. So we have somebody always in the background learning that job. So that way, when that person decides to move on, we're not struggling trying to recreate the wheel.
Totally. And like we had a Google Drive where everything was in, and you just transition the Google Drive down. So somehow I still have access to my University of Maryland Google Drive, but they've continued on. So you have about 5 or 6 years of just documentation of all of our events there, so they can look back in that history and pull it right there.
Hey, as a pre-law advisor, I absolutely have to 100% say that is the great plan, because the years that I've been doing this, we always target people for the next year. And the years that our succession is best is when we get the best cooperation from the students. And I'd like the panel's indulgence that I could give a shout out to Tony Bastone, who I know from the University of Tulsa. I graduated in 1984, Tony, and I sent you a message on the chat, but you might not have seen it. So great to see you again after 35 years.
So you were one of my students? You were one of my students?
No, you were you were some type of liaison with industry and job placement, things like that.
Well, I was the assistant dean of career development.
Yeah,
so I had a lot to do. Yeah.
Yeah, I was in your office a few times.
Okay.
And I've stayed in contact with Ray Yasser all of these years.
Oh, Yasser and I used to play. We were terribly competitive tennis players. In fact, I've been in touch with him recently. So did you graduate from the University of Tulsa?
Yeah, 1984.
Okay.
I've been at Temple University as a part-timer and full-timer for 25 years. And I've been the P.A.D advisor off and on for about 12 years. They took me away for about 4 years to run the master's program committee, which is really remarkable, since my first my first business course after a master's degree was the first day I had property law at Tulsa.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I want to be in touch with you more.
Yes,
Yeah, this happens to me a lot. It just tells me how old I am. Of course, I like to take the European philosophy of aging and say you grow older, not old. Yeah.
Well, look at the chat. I'll send you my email address, and you can do the same.
Good, thank you.
Great seeing you, and thank you, panel. This was really special, me seeing you pop on. And by the way, Ray Yasser sent me a baseball player a few years ago. I still play baseball and softball after all these years. Competitive.
You know, he retired. He just recently retired.
Oh, he didn't tell me. I haven't spoken to him in a year.
Yeah, he said he
Oh.
retired because I referred a student to him who was interested in the university. Well, she'd been accepted, and I said, be sure and look up where he asked her. I said, he teaches sports law. And then I copied him on it, and he got back with me, and he said, I just couldn't take the high technology of teaching by Zoom. So he retired. Yeah. So I'm still in touch with him from time to time. Yeah.
Great. I'm about to.
I got to tell you, this is something I love about P.A.D. It's you have these connections, and they are lifelong connections, and it's really fantastic. I did notice that Jenna has her hand up, and so I wanted to give her a chance to ask a question if she had one.
Thank you so much. So before I ask the question, I'll give you a little bit of backstory. I am president of the American Military American Public University System chapter. And thankfully, my secretary, Chris Looney, is in here with us. So we are a fully virtual chapter. We were chartered in 2013, and we've been fully virtual ever since. So we have, I guess, a little bit of experience in what everybody's going through today with trying to engage virtually. But the problem that I have really noticed since I have taken over is we have what I call the resume members, where they have joined just to put it on their resume. And it's frustrating. It is beyond frustrating to me. So does anyone have any advice as to how to transform them from a resume member to an actual active member?
So I guess I'll jump into this first. Kind of the way we always talk to, because we had a lot of those at Maryland until we kind of transformed some of our activities, but people are going to put in as much as they get out. And so on one hand, you do have the resume builders that will come, they're going to drop the money and run. But those aren't the people that are going to the ones stick around. You want to try to ask one thing, like Katie is saying, ask them to do one thing. Like, hey, can you, being virtual, hey, could you host a Zoom session for this day? Can you find a game that we could do online? Giving them one task to get them hooked. But also it's not just putting it on your resume, but it's knowing that and telling people you're going to get the most out of it, because people in P.A.D, if they hear you're saying P.A.D, they're going to ask you about what you did. And so all P.A.D members are going to ask that question. So even if they put it on there, doing something in P.A.D is going to have P.A.D go a lot further on your resume than just putting it there.
Well, and two, and Janet gave me way too much credit. She's the one that keeps our chapter afloat. But to try to build engagement, we had residual funds this year, so we paid for our members to attend, and there's been like 3 of us actually attend. So it almost feels like we've screwed our tires and not gone anywhere almost in that aspect.
Yeah, and I can understand how frustrating that is. And you know, like Elizabeth said, sometimes you're going to have these people that just stick it on their resume, and it doesn't matter what you do. You can't change their mind. They are not going to participate, and that just sucks. It is disheartening because you put so much effort into it. But the point is, and Katie pointed this out in the chat, that one thing I think Elizabeth talked about a little bit as well. You might get some people, if they thought they were just going to put it on their resume, you ask them to do one thing, and it might have been specifically asking them to come to the conference, and you got one more to come at least. And so some of those people, you're just, even if you ask them, they're just not going to do anything, and it's just kind of something you have to deal with. But when you go to these other members and you ask them, that's how you get them to start being involved. And then they talk to their friends, and you say, well, get your friends to come. What do you want to do? Let's get that. And they can kind of make it their own. And that's how you get it, get more membership involvement, is to just do what they want, do what they're interested in, and let them take the lead after you ask them to get involved. I need you to do this one thing, or, let's plan this Zoom meeting. Let's plan this game night. What's something that you want to play? And then they can take it away from there.
And I guess something else to add on to that is that through Maryland, we actually did mentor-mentee programs where we'd have a current member that would be kind of partnered up with one of the new recruits, And this person would help mentor them into PAD. And it was another way for us to kind of check in on these other people. So it's like you have somebody that's constantly reaching out and checking in on them. So like I would reach out to my mentees once a week and I would check in like, hey, you want to get a cup of coffee? Or hey, you want to go do something? So you have that connection through PAD because a lot of PAD is personal. And yes, you're virtual, but you can almost say, hey, do you want to jump on Zoom real quick? We'll have a cup of coffee. I want to check in on you. Is there anything I can help with law school? Is there anything I can help with the job search? And I'd be willing to help reach out and be a mentor if you don't have as many mentors right now. But like definitely that's an option that could help.
I'm not sure if there's a way to do this at the pre-law level. Maybe Elizabeth, you guys have done something like this. At our law school, we have like 1L representatives so that they're able to talk to their different sections within their 1L classes, at least virtually, because I think we have like A1, A2, B1, B2. So we have all these representatives and they're able to talk to all their friends within their sections. And then, you know, that way you can spread out information, and because they're talking to their friends, maybe their friends will want to join, like Elizabeth was saying earlier. So maybe there's a way to configure that into the pre-law chapter.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic advice that everyone's given. I see we're getting close to the end of the hour, and so I don't want to keep anyone too long, but are there any further questions that we can address for you guys? Yes, no, maybe so. All right. Well, then thank you so much for attending this chapter leadership and chapter operations panel. I hope it was beneficial for you guys, and I hope that you learned a lot on how to, how to become a good leader, what some of those leadership qualities are, how to program, especially during this time of pandemic, how to recruit and how to keep those members engaged, or at least how to try, because, like we said, some of them just, you can't help. And then how to keep your chapter going on for years to come. I believe we've put our emails in the chat, and so feel free to reach out to them. I'll put mine in real quick. And then, yeah, reach out to us. The one last thing that I want to emphasize is use social media. I know like Facebook is for ancient people now, apparently. I'm an old guy, I guess. But on Facebook, there's the Phi Alpha Delta International Group, and that has literally hundreds and thousands of attorneys who are members, and they want to mentor you. They want to reach out and help out. All you have to do is make a post. If you're doing a fundraiser, post your t-shirts or post whatever you're doing. If you need someone to come and speak to your chapter, like Tony's talking about these Tuesday talks, if you want someone to come and talk, post it on there and you'll get 20 to 30 replies of different attorneys who are willing to come and do a Zoom chat with you guys. And so reach out, use the executive office because they're fantastic. Reach out on Facebook and talk to the alumni who want to help you out, and never hesitate to reach out to any of us, and we'll give whatever help we can.